her way. And I know that that was something that she was having a really hard time with, amongst other traumas that she was carrying in her body. The other thing she reported was not only feeling a sense of rebirth and refreshed, she also received an email where a company is offering her a new job, a job that she's really excited for and she wants to obtain. She's already gone through several interview processes and it's down to her and another candidate. So that's so exciting for me. This is a similar experience that I experienced the first time I received this type of healing energy, because there's a lot of blockages that we hold on to in our body and it's hard for energy to flow through. And people can pick up on those blockages, and we don't allow for any energy that the person might want to contribute to us to actually flow through us. So it's hard for any type of energy to flow through, whether it's money or karma or anything of that nature. So it was really cool to hear from her, and I could completely understand what she's experiencing because, as I mentioned, I experienced a very similar experience when I got into pranic healing. So I just wanted to share that positive note. I'm really excited for all of the stuff that she has coming her way. I also wanted to say thank you so much to all of the women that joined the Sacred Circle. I'm so grateful to you all for wanting to connect with me during the full moon. I know that everyone is busy. When you're on a spiritual path, it's not only about doing one practice and being fixed or receiving an energy clearing and being fixed. It's all about maintenance. It's a day-to-day practice. It's like taking a shower. We don't just take a shower one time and think we're clean, right? We constantly have to take showers and maintain ourselves. I was so happy to see so many women taking advantage of the space that was opened up and really taking time for self-care. I'm grateful for you all sharing your energy, not only with me, but with all of the women that joined in the circle. I've received so much positive feedback. I couldn't open up the space without you all. We're going to take a short break, and when we get back, we're going to discuss the pill. This is a pretty controversial topic, and I want to start it off by saying a couple of things. The first is that I am not a professional, and I also don't want this to come off as trying to persuade anyone to get off of the pill. I firmly believe that everyone should be empowered to make their own personal decisions, but with that being said, I also feel the calling to give facts about the pill, because I feel like a lot of the times we sign up for things and we really don't understand the implications. I know that I can relate to that. I've signed up for plenty of things that I agreed to putting into my body where I really don't understand what the side effects are. I just feel like it's safe because I have a doctor making the recommendation, so it must be safe, right? But do we ever stop and think that alongside those recommendations, there's also a long list of bewares? So today we're going to take a closer look at some of those warnings. And I know that the episode is going to come off as somewhat persuading because you are going to feel my emotions come through as I read through some of the research that I've done. I'm human. I can't help it. And I didn't want to re-record and edit this because I really want the gravity of the effects or the implications that some of these drugs have on our body to fully sink in. The first thing I want to do is go over our normal rhythm, our normal natural rhythm on a more scientific level. During our monthly cycle, we produce two different types of hormones, estrogen and progesterone. The hormones peak at different times of the month. The first hormone that we produce right after our monthly flow, right after our bleed, is estrogen. Estrogen is produced and it peaks extremely high within the first 14 days. So while we are on the maiden phase and into the mother phase, we have high levels of estrogen. The estrogen begins to drop right around the middle of the mother phase, and it drops tremendously down through the enchantress phase and into the wise woman phase. The second hormone that our body produces is progesterone. That has a really slow incline that we don't see it fully rise to the top until we are in our enchantress phase. When it crosses paths with the levels of estrogen, that is when we are in the mother phase. Reaches its peak, it's in the enchantress phase, and then it declines straight down while we're in our wise woman phase. Both estrogen and progesterone levels are at the lowest while we are in our wise woman phase, and that allows for our bleed to come through. That is the natural rhythm. I'm adding all of the resources for this information that I've retrieved off the internet in our show notes so that you can get a better visual perspective. What I found really interesting as I began to do this research is when I saw this chart, I immediately was able to identify the phases. And I really wanted to look at the similarities and how these hormones were supposed to make us feel based on studies. What I can say is that there's not a lot of research, and all the research that I find are people talking about the research. They all say there's not enough research on this topic. Everything I found pertaining to estrogen and progesterone was that there was a lot of mood swings involved. I found that very deceiving, especially now that I'm tracking my phases. And I also found it a little sad that the hormones that we have are always tied to something negative. Because if I just went off of all of these studies, then we would show that we're always either high in estrogen or high in progesterone, and that would mean that we're constantly experiencing mood swings. And for me personally, I know that when I experience mood swings, it's during my enchantress into my wise woman phase. So I knew that there had to have been at least some sort of study done where it showed that estrogen was linked to something positive. It took a really long time to find, and apparently there was a small study that was performed that showed that estrogen could potentially be linked to endorphins, which made so much more sense. Because again, when we have high levels of estrogen, that's when we're in the maiden virgin phase and mother phase, when we're feeling really good. It kind of irritates me that there isn't enough studies performed on this topic, to be quite frank. Now that we know what our natural rhythm is like, then I want to talk about what the pill does to this rhythm and what the pill consists of. So the pill consists of two hormones, estrogen and progestin, which is a synthetic hormone that is man-made to replicate progesterone. The pill gives us even higher levels of those two hormones, much higher levels than what our body naturally produces. The combination of high levels of these two hormones makes our bodies believe that we are pregnant. The two hormones are at very high levels and they are running parallel. There's no flow, there's no rhythm between the two, the way we normally have a rhythm where one is higher during the first half of the month and the other one is higher during the second half of the month. They are running at the same level at extremely high levels. And it's not until we stop taking the pill that it immediately drops on a decline, and that is when we experience a bleed. But what that bleed is just the absence of those two hormones, and the absence of those two hormones are letting our body know that we are no longer pregnant, essentially. Because our body believed that we were pregnant, there was no development of the egg and there was no development of the lining of the uterus. So there's no release in egg and no release of the lining of the uterus, which is what makes up our real bleed, our real flow. The hormones stop the ovaries from producing an egg, and it also stops the lining of the uterus from being developed. This is why when we are on the pill, people refer to the bleed that occurs as a fake period, because it is indeed not made up of a real natural flow, a real natural bleed. So what you experience when you're on the pill and you're bleeding is just the decline in the 2 hormones that let your body know that you're indeed not pregnant. And then I believe it also consists of a wall that the progestin creates so that the semen can't get to the uterus. That wall releases. I think this is very important to note, especially because when I talked about the pill in this series, I briefly just touched on the fact that we weren't really being in tune with the wise woman phase if we were on the pill because we weren't experiencing a real menstruation. But the facts are that we are technically not even really experiencing any of the other phases because the estrogen and the progesterone are kept at levels so high that we're not experiencing the full rhythm of what our body does naturally. So I have to assume that we are also not experiencing the fullness of the virgin maiden phase, of the mother phase, and of the enchantress phase. We're going to take a short break, and when we get back, we're going to talk about the side effects that the pills have.
Return to the one.
There are women that report not having any of the side effects that I'm about to mention. I think that's important to note. And there are women that report not only the side effects that we're going to talk about today, but many other side effects. The top side effect is depression. I want to talk about that a little bit. When you're depressed and your happiness is not at the forefront, it doesn't take prime space in your life, then you are actually disconnected with yourself and your intuition. That's a really high price to pay. The second top side effect is candida and fungal overgrowth. So if you experience a lot of yeast infections or urinary tract infections, then the reason for these infections could very well be because you are on the pill. Anything that causes an infection in our body is something to be really mindful of. The top third side effect is nutritional deficiencies. The nutritional deficiencies reported are lack in vitamin Bs, like all the vitamin Bs, vitamin C, vitamin E, zinc, magnesium, and selenium. Selenium is actually important for the thyroid. So if you experience any thyroid problems, then this could very well be linked to the usage of the pill. Top side effect number 4, decrease in libido. Top side effect number 5 is weight gain. Here's where it really gets scary. New studies have recently shown that usage of the pill increases cervical cancer 3 times and increases breast cancer 2 times. Apparently, there were old studies that showed that cervical cancer would decrease with the usage of the pill, but new studies showed that this is actually false information and that it increases. In addition to those risks and side effects, I also wanted to share a study that the Academy of Science conducted. And that's that taking the pill affects the way women perceive a male's level of attractiveness. Isn't that insane? You're not able to perceive whether you are genuinely attracted to this male because your hormones are at really high levels that you're really not able to be in tune with your body. On a scientific level, I really don't know how this works other than sniffing out a mate for reasons of survival and wanting to procreate. But if I'm looking at it just from what we've learned in the Moon Cycle series, then it does make sense. If you're not able to intuitively connect because you're on high levels of hormones and you can't really perceive what you're attracted to, then I can see how there's a problem. What happens when you get off the pill and you're already married to this person and you've already conceived with this person? For me, these are really serious implications. I want to really hold space for anyone that is in that situation right now. I believe that we have the capability to overcome anything, but I do think it's also very important to talk about this and share this knowledge in order to empower ourselves from any decisions that we may be making that are not in our best interest. And so it's important for us to be able to teach our daughters either based on experience or based on facts. This wasn't easy to talk about today, but almost always the truth really is never easy to talk about. This episode was inspired by a really good friend of mine that is on the pill, and she had a really incredible experience while on the pill. She's actually on the pill for medical reasons. Her body began to align itself with the new moon. And I want to clarify what that means. Essentially, her body was, I guess, fighting the rhythm of the pills, and her bleed started on the new moon, which was really interesting. I don't know scientific facts behind this. I just know that both her and I felt that it was important to share and also just important to acknowledge and honor, because she is an avid listener of the podcast, and she also began to do moon rituals about 4 or 5 months ago. So we don't think it's a coincidence that this happened. I really believe that her body was trying to tell her something, alert her to something. Also, I want to acknowledge that if she wouldn't have came to me with the story, I wouldn't have digged into the knowledge on pills, because when I spoke about this initially, I just didn't want to get into it. There wasn't a need or a desire for me to get into it. But as I began to do the research, again, I was really surprised with the information that I found, and I'm willing to bet that most women that are on the pill don't have any knowledge on this information. So I'm grateful that she shared this story with me. I don't want us to take her experience and hope that that happens to us, because I do want to remind everyone she's still not actually having a proper bleed, and her body is still not having the proper rhythm that nature has developed for us. I do think that she somehow willed this to happen, and I think that's just testament of how powerful we are in our rituals and in our practices, where we begin to really pay attention to this type of self-care. That's the only real explanation I have for this. Her acknowledgement of the moon, and as we've discussed before, we are mainly made up of water, so in the same way that the moon pulls our menstruation, why wouldn't it do it with someone that's on any type of medication when you're actually acknowledging the link? So that's what I think happened. I want to dedicate this episode to her and any other woman, young woman out there that is considering or is on the pill. I do want to disclose that I am on birth control. I am on the copper IUD. I was never able to take any type of hormone in my body. My body immediately rejected it when I first attempted in my younger years, and I have been happily using the IUD for many, many years now. For those that don't know, the IUD is an intrauterine device. It is a T-shaped piece of plastic that has copper bound all around it, and it is hormone free. It lasts up to 12 years. It's placed inside your uterus. It has a 99% effectiveness. There are some risks, like with anything else. You can get pregnant, and if you do get pregnant, there's that 1% chance, and you can face complications during your pregnancy. It debilitates the sperm, so the sperm are not strong enough to actually go up into your uterus. There are also women that report excruciating pain with very heavy bleeds. I haven't experienced either of those two, except in the very beginning when I first got it inserted for the very first time. I'm on my second round, and I do have to say that there was a moment when I really wanted to take it out intuitively. Like I would think about it all the time, and it would bother me, sort of create a little bit of a panic. But this was also during the time when I was really wanting to conceive, and my son was coming to me in my dreams. I was already having a ton of dreams about my son before I was even pregnant. So I think that's what those two were tied to. But I have also spoken to women that have the same feeling of like being freaked out about it and wanting to get it out, which I completely understand. It is still a foreign object that is inside our bodies. And let's be completely honest, like we really don't know what the implications can be from a long-term perspective and from studies that have not been conducted yet. So I do want to be really transparent and say, I don't know if this is safe just because it is working for me and I do like it. We honestly don't know. Everything is proceed at your own risk. We're going to take a break, and when we get back, we're going to discuss moon work as well as a couple of announcements that I have for the week. Return to the one. This week, I want to encourage you all to find out what your friends are using as a contraceptive, find out what your nieces, what every woman that surrounds you that is using a contraceptive, to find out what kind of contraceptive they're using and share this information with them. And also to just do research on the current contraceptive that you're using, if any, and take a close look and see if the implications are worth the risk. I also just want to take the time to thank everyone for your loving support on the podcast, on the Instagram, on our iTunes reviews. We made it up to 42 reviews. Thank you guys so much. This means the world to me. It is so important for us as content creators to get the work out there, the knowledge out there. If the content that I'm creating is resonating with you, then it would really mean a lot to me. If you haven't already, if you head over to iTunes and rate us. You have to rate us and also write a review. It counts for so much. It helps us get exposure, and also you're sharing the knowledge with other women. I am still doing the We Moon giveaway. So as soon as we wrap this series, then I am going to announce who the winner is. In order to win the We Moon calendar, then all you have to do is rate us and write a review on iTunes. I also want to remind you guys that on November 19th from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. I will be at Podcast Stereo Fest. I am so excited for this festival. We're going to be surrounded with tons of podcasters. So if you got your tickets, I want to say thank you for getting your tickets. I can't wait to see you all there. And there may be a chance that we open up the festival to more registrants. So it's a free event. So please be sure to follow Podcast Stereo Fest in order to see if we're going to be opening up the space for more registrants. Follow us on Instagram at LetThereBeLuz and send us an email at lettherebeluzpodcast@gmail.com. You can visit our website with our show notes, lettherebeluz.com. You could follow me at Luz Warrior on Instagram. Love you guys. Till next time.